Well, what's going on? My name is David, and I'm joined by my wife, Hannah, and this is Clear as Mud. Hannah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Like we were talking just before, we just came back from a cottage, so we're a little tired, but I'm excited about this conversation. I'm excited to get back on.
Mm-hmm.
So
we had some great feedback from the first episode of Clear as Mud, where we talked about really a good depth of staying connected. Which was really cool. A lot of people enjoyed it. A lot of people thought, okay, wow, when is episode 2 coming out? And guess what? If you're listening to this or watching this, this is when the episode is out right now. You're listening to it right now or watching on the YouTube channel. And it's just so great. And I'm glad that we get to do this together. I really am. And today, we're really hopping into a cool conversation all around the art of communication. Yeah. Communication. I'm going to humbly brag at the very beginning.
Okay.
I think we're great communicators. I really do.
I know, but I always bring it back. That first year, we were awful at communicating. I'm not saying we're anywhere near like done or perfect, but
that first year was very interesting. Our marriage was hilarious at the very beginning. Communication. I was like this. Ram, like communicate everything. And you were just like, okay, let's just chill out for a second.
I needed my time to process.
Yeah, you did.
And you wanted to speak about everything and anything all at the same time. Right there, away. In the moment. And
I did not give you a chance.
Yeah. And then I would just look at you and be like,
I'm done.
There's no words.
So we're going to talk about the art of communication today. And as we gave you the heads up in the first episode that we did the marriage course through Alpha, and we thought, wow, this has helped us. We would love to talk about it in real life, in real time for us. And it has definitely strengthened our marriage. It really allowed our marriage in some ways to breathe really well. Like it helped us understand, okay, wow, we need to talk a lot more in this area. Okay, man, we're doing really good in this area. And then also, what do we need to work on? It was just like such a great course. So if you've never done the marriage Alpha course, please do it. They even have a pre-marriage course, which was fascinating and amazing. Like I helped run that a little bit through our church, and those couples said it was just so great for them. So so tonight, the art of communication. So this was episode 2 or date night 2 that we did.
Yep.
And what we found out really cool and really quickly about this conversation with the marriage course was that communication is at the root of connection. And that made me really think of a really so if we want to connect really well, communication's going to be at the root system. Yes, there's a few things probably within the root system, but this was a deep, deep root, and it helped us understand because what we found out as we were discussing in the date night was we all have a deep longing for emotional connection. And
absolutely,
we definitely do. Make sure you're speaking into your mic.
Sorry.
Sometimes you have to let her know. You have to lay her down the law.
Well, he was told me to be at more of an angle. So in communicating well, I'm listening well this time, really which we're going to talk about later. Communicating, then we're going to talk about listening later.
Yeah.
But I was being a good listener, so I'm angling my body so I can talk to you and look at the camera. So maybe I missed the whole mic thing in there as well.
But we're all good. I just wanted to communicate well with you. Just let you know, hey, we want the listeners and the viewers to just hear your beautiful voice. So
that was just a live action.
Yeah. So we all long for a deep, deep emotional connection. And I look back at my life and it's fascinating when you look back and say, okay, yeah, I acted in a way, or I listened or treated or lived out my life in a certain way because I just wanted emotional connection. We're wired for that. And I think it's fascinating. So when we found that out, what was brought forth for us in that conversation of we all have a deep longing for emotional connection was that good communication involves our words, tone of voice, and body language. What were your thoughts on that?
Words, tone of voice, and body language. Communication. Absolutely. I mean, that's probably the definition if you could look it up. But I think the biggest hard-hitting one for me is tone of voice.
Oh.
Always. It's always the tone of voice that changes the conversation for me and how somebody communicates to me based on how that makes me feel. So depending on whether it's like a raised voice or it's more of a timid quiet, or if it's like an unsure, I think that changes communication a lot for me.
Yeah, for me, it's body language. I always say to you, look at me, Hannah. Like, I need you to look at me. Like, your body language when we're having a conversation, like, I desire that connection within body language. Like, it's for me, good communication. Like, I need that body language so I feel that connection when I'm communicating. Like, I'm being heard. I'm also being seen and I'm being heard. So it's fascinating. And obviously, good communication comes with our words.
Of course.
Yeah, you need to have your words in that moment to understand that your communication level is going well or going bad. And what I found so fascinating is when we were going through this, where they said, when you aim your marriage, it should be like this moment that you actually listen 2 times more than you talk.
Twice as much as you talk.
Twice as much, like 2 times. I shouldn't say 2 times. Well, great communication skills right now by me. But when you actually are listening 2 times more, it's actually enhancing your communication level with your partner, with your spouse, with your wife or your husband. And so we learned huge about this about ourselves, the listening factor. So the good communication was our words, tone of voice, body language. You really strive on the tone of voice. Like, I could be really loud and you'd be like, stop yelling at me. I'm like, I'm just being passionate. And then I need you to look at me in the eyes while we're talking. But then they transitioned, like, the good communication actually comes from, okay, you are going to be a listener as well, a deep, deep listener. What'd you learn about yourself through that?
So, I mean, for me, I'm definitely not the best listener. I don't think it's important, I'll doze off and think about other things.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, Hannah, look at me. Like, I need to know that you're looking at me.
We've learned that if it's important information, you need to look at me and be like, Hannah, I need you to listen right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I needed to be like, okay, cool. I need to listen. This is important to David. And that's part of communicating. You communicated that this is something important, that we're not just having a fluff conversation, making dinner. You're like, no, you need to hear this right now, or we need to discuss this. And that helps me understand, okay, so I need to listen and take in, and not just in one ear out the other.
But we found also that, like, you were like quite honest, like, you're not a big talker either.
No.
Like, you just aren't.
No.
And that's okay.
We balance each other. It's great.
Yeah. So, like, the fact that you weren't a big talker also was interesting, that you needed to learn to listen even better. It was just funny. Like, I found it funny that you weren't like strong talker and needed to listen. You're like, no, I'm not a big talker and I actually need to listen better. Like, I kind of doze off.
Well, I think a lot of people think being quiet is listening. And just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're actually listening. You're silent. There's a difference between listening and silence.
Yeah.
So when you're silent, you could be thinking about anything. You could be thinking about nothing. But when you're listening, you're actually taking in the words that what you're saying. And I forget if we get to this later in our talk, but something they had us do was you would talk about something that you wanted to tell me about, and discuss. I had to listen and then repeat it back to you, which feels so childish in the moment to be like, okay, so this is how you feel about a situation, and this is how you'd like to proceed with it, and this is something that you feel that I'm doing, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But then that makes me be like, I need to listen and regurgitate it back to you about.
Listening is ridiculously hard.
Oh, yeah. It's because the world thinks, oh, I'm quiet, I'm a good listener. I can sit in a lecture in college and be silent. I'm not listening. It's gone. Sometimes you have your AirPods in, you're listening to music. If there's other students listening, like you get it. You're not really listening. Maybe I should take notes while you're talking. That'll help me listen better.
I'll buy you a little notepad.
Yeah, I'll just carry around a notepad and just, okay, David told me that I need to pick up my clothes off the floor.
Sounds terrible. Like, it's just like I'm like dominating in our marriage. It's just like I don't let Hannah do anything. She just has to listen to me and write everything down that I say.
No. Okay, well, you asked me. Now it's your turn.
Yeah, it's true. I learned something like I talk way too much and I don't allow you to talk. So like when you say that you need to learn to talk more, I'm not even allowing you space sometimes to talk because I just love chatting. I love communication. Like this is something how I was brought up. So like I was constantly talking, wanting you to look at me and be in the moment and speak to me. But then when it came to like me finally like going for a breath of air, you were just like, no, I don't want to talk.
Or you had said so much that I had to process how I actually felt about that. And then I had to figure out how I needed to communicate that back to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's also just our world not being okay with silence in waiting for somebody, which I know you joke about it all the time on your Zoom calls, that you're really good at Zoom silence, but maybe Zoom silence is easier than personal, like face-to-face silence.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna talk more about listening in a minute, and that's just, we quickly got into it there. But it's fascinating. Communication is in communicating, the importance is talking, using words, body language, tone of voice. But what I loved what they did for us and understanding how you learn how to communicate well in the hard times is also communicating well in the good times. So they were like, okay, in your marriage, it's important to share thoughts and feelings and dreams about what you have for yourself, but also for your marriage and your family. So I found that fascinating. I was just like, okay, wow, if we can take our time to communicate well in the joys, in the peace, in the celebration, in the happiness, I really do feel that will affect us in the way we communicate when it becomes, okay, we're going through a real hard season. So I love that they said in your marriage, it's important to share your thoughts, your feelings, and your dreams. And then they dropped the bomb of, this all is determined by the way that you've been brought up.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously, you get brought up in family and you're like, I'm never going to be like my family. I'm never going to be like my parents. I'm never going to be like my cousins or my aunts or my uncles. And that's fine. Like you can definitely flip the switch in the generational stuff, that there's lots of research of taking care of the generational stuff within your family and beating those things. But we looked at this and it's just like, wow, like the way we were brought up was so drastically different. It kind of shows us the results of why we talk and communicate the way we do. Like your family communicates way different than mine. And there's pros and cons to both sides. Like you want to give a snapshot of how you were kind of like raised up or brought up within communication styles and talking about your feelings and your emotions and your dreams and
yeah, I mean,
and we do need to say this. We respect our parents
absolutely
so much. We love our parents so much.
They both parents did the best job that they could. And we joke about it all the time. We're obviously striving to parent well, but Tatum will need counseling one day for something we did.
We've done.
There's something that we're going to go so opposite from our parents that we're going to go on the other spectrum, and she's going to be like, I'm never going to be like
She's going to be like,
parents.
why did you have to do a podcast? That's what she's going to be. She's like, why did you guys have to do a podcast?
Why do you guys have to talk about yourself in front of people? It's embarrassing. It's totally going to be her.
No, but we just want to say that we love our parents and we respect them and we value them so much. So when we're talking about our upbringing, it's not smashing or thinking that they did it wrong. It's just, this is what we learned within our marriage course that we did.
It's just our experience.
It's our experience and we wanted to share it. So upbringing of emotions and feelings and sharing it with one another within family context.
Yeah. So for my family, our communication, you knew something needed to be talked about, before someone actually talked to you about it. So I guess you could say we used our body language. I wouldn't say in the healthiest of ways, and myself included. I mean, I am very passive in confronting conflict. So, I mean, a lot of the times I take my mom and I, for example, like we would both kind of say our piece, probably not say it very nicely. And then we'd go off in our own ways. Sometimes we'd come back and apologize. Most of the time we would, but it would just be like, we just took our space and we just like let it be. So what I kind of got from that is I never learned how to communicate emotions. It's different to communicate and say, this whatever thing drives me nuts about you, or this upsets me, but it's saying, why does that upset me? That was something that I never dug deep enough to be like, why does this make me mad?
Yeah.
Simple things like I'd sit on the counter and talk to my mom about my day, and she would give advice. And some days, like, I didn't know how to tell her, but I'm like, I don't want your advice. I just want you to listen and understand that sometimes my life is hard too.
Did you ever say, Mom, just look at me. Just look at me like I did to you?
Yeah, no. I don't always want that attention.
I know.
I'm okay with her cooking dinner and I'm talking at her.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You did. Like, I remember, like, as we were getting married and when we got married, you were like, I used to just sit with my mom in the kitchen. She'd putter away at food, and I would just talk about my emotions and my feelings. And sometimes she would listen. Sometimes she would give advice. And yes, sometimes you didn't want it, but sometimes you probably needed it.
Oh, for sure.
But, like, you and your mom were the ones that drove the force of sharing with one another. Like, it was very mother-daughter.
Yeah. Definitely, like, my mom and I growing up had the best communication relationship of all my family members.
Which you needed.
Sure.
You needed someone like that.
Exactly. It's interesting when you bring it back to, you were talking about communicating as words, body language.
And tone of voice.
Tone of voice. So yeah, and then I saw a lot of tone of voice between my brothers and my dad, but they were just battling it out. And so for me, I guess when we got married, I saw a lot of raised voices.
Yeah,
so when you came passionate at me, which was your words, to me, that was enough to be you were yelling at me. And I couldn't handle that. But that's also just, you're sensitive to the things you were brought up in.
Yeah.
I could have been like, you were more sensitive to the fact that I wasn't talking. And you're like, why aren't you talking to me and communicating?
Yeah, and that
like,
comes,
do you not?
Yeah, and that comes to my upbringing when we were going through the marriage course. I saw my upbringing of, okay, wow, my family, my brother, my mom and dad, we literally communicated so much. Probably too much sometimes. And we would always say, like, okay, let's over communicate. Our dinner table was the spot where we hashed it out. We yelled, we fought, we were passionately talking, we celebrated, we laughed. There were so many great, like, amazing things that happened within our dinner table. But and I love the way that I was brought up. I love being able to communicate my emotions and my feelings. I have a hard time sometimes when I'm in communication with other people that don't know how to communicate their feelings, because I need to hear those things. I want to, and I desire to hear them. So, like, that's when I'm like looking at you and I'm seeing you while we're communicating. Like, that's me showing my emotion to you. Like, I want this for the two of us, right? So, like, as I was being brought up, I was being shown this by my parents. Like, they would hash things out in front of me, my brother. They would show affection to each other. Like, it was just like, so sharing those dreams and emotions and feelings for me was just like, I just want to do that with you all the time. Like, I wanted to talk to you about everything. We would talk on the phone while we were dating, like crazy. I love that connection. And a lot of the time, the phone call was me talking, and you would just listen. And it was just fascinating. And that's what was so cool to find out about the importance of talking, was that your upbringing does affect the way your marriage will handle listening and talking and sharing with one another, in the good and in the bad, or just the tough. I don't want to say bad. I think it's the tough sometimes. I think the biggest thing the Alpha Course gets you to realize is that you come from different backgrounds and recognizing what those backgrounds are. Because sometimes you get into a marriage and you just start fighting and you're like, oh, well, we don't have a good marriage. It's like, well, you come with your own problems. I come with my own. Just because we're together, it doesn't mean they're marriage problems. It's individual problems. But even with getting back to communicating, you're talking a bit about this with your parents today at the cottage. Something that the Alpha Course kind of brought up. It's hard to remember, like 8 weeks back to this episode. But is finding your communication. I'm going to make this really cheesy for all you people who like cheesy things. Your communication location. So like for us, walks is where we communicate the best. That's where you could be uncomfortable with silence because we're looking around at things. We're talking about houses and dreaming about other things at the same time. But that's our place where we can walk and talk and dream and just get things off of our chest.
So I think it's what's super important with communicating is finding what location you as a couple are comfortable with. If it's over coffee, great. That's hard for some people because it's face
eye to eye.
You want. I'm not in my mic. You want face to face. But sometimes for me, I'm like, I need to be able to look into something else and process, not you're waiting for an answer.
Yeah.
And I don't have that answer yet.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So I think it's about finding
your communication location.
Yeah, whether that's you're talking while you're getting dinner ready, or it could be anything. You're getting ready in the morning, or
I love that. But what's another massive takeaway for us was the factor that we have barriers from allowing good communication to happen. So within communication, you will hold back from sharing or talking or chatting about something because you have this behind the scenes in your mind and in your heart of you don't want they call them the barriers. And I don't have them all in front of me, but there was like 15 or 16 of them in front of us. And we had to check off which ones separately and then come back together. And you and I had the exact same barriers of why we wouldn't communicate something good or healthy or well, because these three things actually stand in the way. So the three barriers that we had was that we might upset them. So we wouldn't share. So we don't want to talk about the tough thing or something that we were dreaming about or emotions or feelings because we didn't want to upset them. Second was you didn't know where to start because maybe it was big or it was complicated or maybe it was super small and you didn't want to just jump right in. You didn't know where to start. And the third was disturb the peace.
Yeah.
Those were our three barriers. Might upset them. Don't know where to start. And you didn't want to disturb the peace. And those three barriers to me are, like I think back of communicating with you and chatting with you and dreaming with you. And I will sometimes hold back because I'm like, man, I don't want to upset her. I don't want to disturb the peace. And I just don't know where to start.
It's hard to know, and hard to know when to pick the right time to go about it. I've learned that my timing is not always the best, along with my delivery sometimes. But I think that's me having a lack of communicating soon enough that it builds up so much that it needs to come out at some point. I mean, I think that's just something to discuss with your partner, just what things, like, why would you not communicate with me? What is a reason that would stop you from having a conversation with me?
And I think what you're saying there is fascinating, right? Like, if you're like, okay, well, I need to communicate with Hannah, and then I could start the conversation off being like, okay, I don't want to upset you. And this is usually the barrier why I don't want to have a conversation. Like,
absolutely. Use the barrier
and show that you need to have the conversation, right? So that's what's fascinating is you notice your barriers, you identify them as a couple. And I wish I had all 15, 16 of them in front of me, but you identify them as a team, as a unit, as a family. And you decide, okay, how do we get past these barriers? Because we need to have good communication in our marriage or in our relationships, right? And this is what's huge. So these barriers are a huge play. So there's the upbringing, there's the barriers, and then there's the understanding of words, language, like words, tone of voice, and body language. Like it's just, they did such a fascinating job or fantastic job of helping us see that there's roots to this to make it survive and last a long, long time. And then they hit listening, which, like you said, and what we kind of joked around earlier is that, like, listening is tough.
Oh, yeah.
Listening's real tough. And they said that a crazy fact is in the research around this is the factor of we only listen for 17 seconds before you check out. So, like, you have your partner's, like your husband or wife's attention for 17 seconds potentially before they check out.
I feel like that's lower now that TikTok's a thing. I wonder when that stat came out.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, our attention span's so minimal, right? So it's just like, wow. And then what happened is, out of that research, Because listening, what we chatted about quickly already, was listening has the power to show your partner, your husband or wife, that you love and value them. So when you're listening well, when you're leaning in, when you're understanding, when you're hearing their voice and their tone or whatever, you're showing them that you value them and you love them and you're there for them. But when we check out, there's 5 bad habits that come into listening. And the 5 habits where you disengage, you also are reassuring. Then you step into, you think you need to give advice. And 4 is you go off on a tangent. And then 5 is you're an interrupter. Yeah. So when you have bad listening habits, you are disengaging, reassuring. You think it's just like you need to reassure them. And then 3 is give advice. 4 is go off on a tangent. And then 5 is you just interrupt them because you're just done with the conversation. And it's just like, it's not important anymore. And you just need to jump in. And I identified with, I always give advice. Like you went through that job change not too long ago.
Oh, good.
And I was just like, Hannah was not excited about the job change. It wasn't like going well. And I was just like giving advice. And I was interrupting. And it was just not what you needed. I was not listening to you. I wasn't hearing your emotion and your feelings. And
what was the one line you said?
Oh, I can't remember.
It was like a cheesy, was it a quote or something?
Oh, don't make excuses. It was like, find solutions, not excuses.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times he told me that until I was like at work.
That was my advice.
Losing it all over the phone at him. I'm just like, I don't need advice. I just need you to understand that this is really crappy right now.
Find solutions,
and
not
just
excuses.
Be in a crappy place with me. I just need to express it.
And I interrupted. I just interrupted you. I didn't listen to you.
I was also calling you in the middle of your workday as well. Like, I do need to think about that as well. You're also trying to get things done.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're probably like, how can I get her off the phone so I can get back to work too? But like, I also really want to listen. So I'm going to give a little bit of advice and hopefully that works.
That's hilarious. But so bad listening or not listening well leads into 5 bad habits. You identified with disengaging.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then you are an interrupter. The other night we were sitting on this couch. And I was telling Hannah something, and she just kept interrupting me. And I said, "You're using one of your bad habits."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Shoot."
Yeah.
But like since we've done this, it's been just fascinating to see
pull the little things out as we go along with one another, because these bad habits will play a huge role in stopping you and I from actually. Like, it's funny. So we talked about the barriers from having good communication, but when we know each other's bad habits, they actually like, oh, I don't want to talk to Hannah because she's just going to interrupt me. Yeah. You got to be able to identify like what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these habits can end your communication.
Yeah. They ultimately will shut your partner down.
And you can also tell them in a nice way, like, hey, you're interrupting.
Yeah.
Like, you could say it a lot nicer, not just like
100%.
Stop talking. I don't know.
Yeah. And then we learned very quickly that there is that thing you've already you hit on in the very beginning. There's 5 reflective listening patterns that helps you show the value and show the love and the trust in those moments. And it was so awkward on the episode of the date night, they called them. The couple that are leading the night, they literally sat down and they had a fight in front of you, like or a discussion in front of you. It wasn't a fight, where they use these reflective listening patterns where you try to be in the partner's shoes. So you listen to them and you try to understand what they're reciprocating to you or telling you, and then you acknowledge what they said. So you tell them back what they said. You find out what's most important. I think for us, a big thing that we've learned through this is through having good communication where we listen well, our ears are towards one another. We're actually choosing healthier times to have conversation. It's not just in the passing or the brushing of the shoulder or just seeing each other quickly before I have to go out to a meeting.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not the right time.
Yep, if it's something
because
we
I
need
can't
to
listen
discuss
now.
more.
I remember I can't remember when it was, but like it was after we had this conversation, this date night, and you were like, I can't have this conversation because I can't listen well right now. Like T needs food, I need to make dinner, and you're out the door soon. Like and I think that is it has helped us see one another even more. Like, yes, communication is listening and communicating with our words, but I find that I'm seeing you now.
It's even preparing the other person for the conversation. Like some of the times, I know you hate it, but I'll text you during the day and be like, hey, we need to talk tonight. And then he immediately goes, am I in trouble?
I do. No, because I just want to because then I know, like, okay, I don't need to be at work thinking like, oh shoot, what did I do? What did I say? Did I interrupt her?
No, it's more me being a warning, like, hey, we need to have a serious conversation today. There's something I need to talk about. Yeah. And then that just allows you to know, so that if I start talking about something and you're like going to video game with the boys, and I'm kind of like, hey, I need a half an hour.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, what was your biggest takeaway?
Do you have it written down what my biggest takeaway is?
I do.
Okay.
Do you want to look at my notes?
Yeah, I would, because I'm not remembering what my biggest takeaway was.
It wasn't very big then if she doesn't remember her takeaway.
We prepped for this last week.
I know. I'm just razzing you.
Okay, so the note says, I'm just going to read it and then I'm going to understand it. Being intentional, even when reflective listening can be awkward. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. It's hard to put the work into it because it is just so awkward to say. And it makes you feel, I guess, stupid to have to repeat what the person literally just said to you.
Yeah.
But that shows you that I know what you said to me and what's important.
But this leads into you, like what you said earlier, is like you need to become a listener. Like you need to become intentional with listening. And
that means I need to go through the awkward times to become a better listener. And then I won't always have to do that.
Yeah.
But even like, because I'm a bad listener, if I doze off for half of it and then I tell you back what you're like, no, my main point was this.
Yeah.
So you can help me understand what actually is going on if I haven't fully grasped what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely my biggest takeaway, is just doing the awkwardness of
because at some point it doesn't become awkward.
Yeah. And it just becomes habit. And that's what we all want to get to, is that it's just easy and you just do it without thinking.
Yeah. My biggest takeaway was I've got to stop swallowing the conversation with my mouth and my words. Like I'm constantly talking when we're even talking about the good stuff.
Yeah.
I won't let you speak sometimes. And it's not because I'm like, I don't want to listen to you. It's just like, I love having conversation and communicating. And that's how I was brought up. You just kind of let your lips flap, 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 flap. And you have a blast, or you hash it out. But what I think I've noticed is in our marriage, in our relationship, for it to be a deep conversation when it needs to be deep, I need to be silent to allow you to speak, because you need to find your voice as well. And you do have your voice. Like, we don't need people thinking, well, Hannah never speaks. She does speak, trust me. But I just need to make sure that I'm allowing you to feel comfortable to just open up even more. So, yeah.
Find your communication location.
Communication location. Ours is a big walk.
Yeah.
We love walks.
Yeah. Baby cannot be on that walk.
Yeah.
Just so you know, if you have children, not happening.
Yeah.
You're not going to communicate how you want.
Yeah. I love doing this with you.
I do too. You know, like while you were kind of wrapping up there, I was listening.
What did I say?
Let's not do that. Let's not do a live example.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking, we need to start ending these with something fun.
Like what? Well, maybe we should say that for next time.
Yeah. No, we're not going to do it on
rock, paper, scissors.
No, that's not fun.
Because then people on the podcast, the audio, they don't get to see.
No, they don't. Yeah. No, but something like communicating. Like I think back how like you and Rowan on Locally Grown do the determination day.
Yeah. We could think something.
Yeah.
I like it.
Just so like, you know, we're not always so serious to people.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're actually fun. We don't just sit here and have serious conversations until we go to bed.
Yeah.
No.
That's cool. Yeah. We'll figure something out for the next episode to end it off a little bit light and fun and maybe loving. Yes. But hey,
we'll do that.
We just want to say thanks so much. We're just so grateful that you are checking out Clear as Mud.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode, because guess what? They get a little deeper, and we actually had a massive, massive fight one of the nights.
Is the next one the sex one?
No.
That was the one we had.
We had a massive fight about sex.
We didn't actually finish the episode. We had to finish it at a later date.
Yeah, because the fight was so big. We didn't use our communication skills very well that night.
Apparently this one didn't stick with us for that conversation.
But it has outside of the sex conversation. So guess what? This is wrapping up now. We're just so grateful for you guys. And we hope you have an incredible day of whatever you are doing. Have a good one.
See ya.